On June 26th, the Democratic debate happened, consisting of 10 members of the Democratic Party, and about half of them, I think anybody even recognized when they walked in, maybe less. So let's go over them from left to right as they stood on the debate stage. The leftmost being Bill de Blasio, who was very loudly basically saying the same things that Bernie does, so pretty far left positions. He and Warren were the only ones that raised their hands in favor of replacing private insurance with a full Medicare for all public system. Frankly, I could not get out of my head how much this dude looks like the human personification of a toothbrush. Anyways, he actually did pretty well. He kept doing this thing where he looked right at the camera pretty much every time, which at first was uncomfortable, but it worked pretty well because the camera work was really weird out of the gate. It was very close to everyone's face. But I suppose if they zoomed out, they'd have to go into a bird's eye view because there's so many candidates, so I don't really blame them. But I thought Bill de Blasio did pretty well, given that he was the last candidate, I believe, to squeeze onto any of the debate stages. He only announced a couple weeks ago. I could see him getting to somewhere around 2% solidly after this, which is a big leap for him, given that he basically had no supporters prior. New Yorkers don't really like him that much. So far, his messaging was pretty good. I thought he did pretty well in his some of his jabs regarding the keeping of private insurance, mentioning how he believes that Medicare for all system will get rid of a lot of the co-pays, deductibles, whatever that have to do with private insurance and get rid of a lot of the clutter. Moving on, we've got Tim Ryan, who looks like Flats the Flounder from SpongeBob. He looked really scared. For some reason, his eyes were open really wide, and it was terrifying. He was mostly ass. He didn't really have much time to talk. He just didn't talk much at all. When he did, Tulsi Gabbard straight spatulaed this man on foreign policy, which is pretty bad for him. Overall, he really did not do well. He tried to take a center-left position and didn't do a good job presenting himself or any of his policies, really. Moving on to the next candidate, we've got Julian Castro, who, in my opinion, won the debate. Throughout the debate, it was extremely impressive anytime he talked. He came off as being very, very genuine. None of his responses seemed canned, which is definitely nice to hear, and it's generally viewers like candidates that sound presidential but not fake or overly rehearsed, and I thought he treaded that line really nicely. Castro did very well when it came to immigration. In fact, I thought he completely dominated the immigration position. When he basically told all the candidates, I want you, everyone to say whether or not they stand for 1325, which has to do with law enforcement being able to jail people who try and cross the border and various border laws. That's in response to the Trump administration with the terrible conditions for the kids and whatnot. And I thought when he made the comment, we should be pissed off about what happened to people that have been mistreated. It seemed like he was really personally annoyed and angry about the issue, which I think could resonate with a lot of viewers. And he was pretty steady at about 1% in a lot of polling. A lot of people don't know who he is. He is a former San Antonio mayor and was the head of housing and urban development under the Obama administration. And in San Antonio, people love him in San Antonio. And he's somebody who could be in contention for an open Senate seat in Texas. And he might actually have a half-decent chance because he's so well-liked in San Antonio. And overall, as we could see from this debate, he has a pretty great stage presence. And he generally comes off as pretty likable. So moving on, Cory Booker. A lot of people said Cory Booker did well. I thought he was okay. He basically kept mentioning how often Newark is basically a shithole. And then he tried to speak some Spanish, which was all right. Other than that, I don't remember that much of what he said. I think he did jab Warren a little bit on gun control and did pretty well on that. He got the most airtime, which is pretty favorable for him. He toned it down a little bit for this one, but he just sounds... excuse me. Holy shit. He just sounds not genuine. My greatest fear would be if Cory Booker narrated my life. He goes and he picks up the water and he unscrews the cap from the water, and we're going to drink it. And we're going to return that water back to the table where it belongs, and we're going to give enough water to the American people. You just heard the water bottle crack, and we're going to still look into that. And I did that in my city of Newark. Yeah, that was basically his entire demeanor. It just becomes kind of obnoxious. Maybe that's just a personal thing. So that sort of like canned-sounding voice with his unfortunately paired up lazy eyes, which feels like a mean thing, to point out because there's nothing he can do about that. It just makes him look disconnected. I just don't see him like resonating at all, especially in a general election, because he comes off as so ungenuine and canned. It often felt like he was sort of pumping his own brakes on whether or not he wanted to be more or less progressive. Like he was trying to like finesse himself between. And I felt like he didn't really take that many super solid policy positions. Like I still can't really get a beat on what his policies are. And moving on to Elizabeth Warren, I thought she started extremely well. And overall throughout the debate, I thought she was really good. Other than, oh my God, it seemed like for almost 45 minutes just in the center of the debate. So at the end of the first half, the beginning of the second half, she disappeared. I don't believe she got a single word in during the immigration section, which is extremely long. And that's where Castro really took over. Yeah, I mean, it felt like she should have been the one dominating because she got like 4 questions in the first 5 minutes. And then after that, it got into a lot of topics such as immigration. And it was Castro leading the discussion and not her. I thought she did pretty decently near the end. Not as good as she started. I thought she came off very well. She sounded passionate, which definitely helps. She sounded angry, which next to Cory Booker and Beto O'Rourke definitely shows in contrast, who are both campaigning on positivity. So I thought overall, pretty damn good showing. Not amazing, but she definitely stood out. And the next candidate is Beto O'Rourke, whose campaign has been sliding from previous about 8-9% at its peak support. He's down to about 3 or 4% support nationally. He needed to get a big boost from this debate stage, and people thought, he's really charismatic, he's Obama-like. That was one of the worst debate performances I think I have ever seen. I mean, it was disastrous. There was at one point where the moderator asked him a question. Can you answer on blah, 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 blah? I can't remember what. And he said, yes, I can. And then there was a pause of 3 or 4 seconds. And the moderator was like, are you going to answer the question? And then he proceeds to answer the question. And it was like, what? The whole time he looked like he was almost going to throw up the entire time. He looked really nervous. And I think it's because when he was campaigning in Texas, he could just kind of loosely, vaguely support various positions of the Democratic Party because I don't think he had much of a primary challenge. It was almost all about the general for the Senate seat against Ted Cruz, which he narrowly lost. He almost won, which is very impressive that he came that close in a red state like Texas. When he was in Texas, he was loosely referring to possibly supporting Medicare for all and various positions on the left, but he's just done a very bad job on taking a solid stance on the Democratic stage. I think he's trying to position himself slightly to the right of the progressives of the party, which doesn't really work because if he's running sort of an Obama-like campaign, you have to really campaign on change, trying to bring actual progress, and he's just not coming across as a progressive. That on top of the fact that he just spoke like shit, and Castro was just hammering him on his immigration policy, and Bill de Blasio was getting in there. Everybody was just getting in their punches on Beto O'Rourke. He became a complete punching bag, and he was just straight ass, and he is hurting his chances of running for the other Senate seat that is up for re-election this year. And what was very interesting is that Castro was the one who was going after Beto O'Rourke by far the most. And what might be going on is a proxy Senate debate between them because both of them may be in contention for the same Senate seat in Texas, Castro and Beto. And Castro is hammering Beto on immigration, which, big deal in Texas, That's huge. I mean, he was killing him. So Castro needed to really go after Beto because Beto's base was in Texas and Castro needed that same base. Castro might have just yoinked Beto's base almost completely that he had in Texas because there was a bit of overlap and most of them were going for Beto first. So you might see Castro go up to like 3, 4, 5% in the polls, and Beto might be like 1%. Maybe 2% based on name recognition. This is all really unfortunate for somebody who was considered a huge star in the party, and I think he would be better served to drop out before it's too late. He still has a long career ahead of him in Texas, and it would be pretty unfortunate for this to kill his career, possibly. So moving on to Amy Klobuchar, who was extremely okay. Like, I don't remember really any of what she said. I don't think she really stood out much at all. I don't think she really did anything or helped her campaign at all. Nothing good, nothing bad. Extremely forgettable. It's pretty easy to forget that she was, frankly, on that stage afterwards. Moving on to Tulsi Gabbard. Had some good highs and a lot of like average to like just below average performance. At the beginning, there was a question she was asked about women's equality, and she proceeded to just talk about her record in the military, which was weird. I mean, I get it because they didn't really they didn't have introductions. It was just really fucking strange that she just didn't answer the question at all. Yeah, it was just really weird. Her shining moment was against Tim Ryan on foreign policy regarding the attacks in 9/11 and apparently some of the inaccuracies that he had, which really weren't as inaccurate as she made them sound, like his claims. But she still really seemed to embarrass him on foreign policy, and she really stood out in foreign policy when that really wasn't a topic of this debate, which I think could stick out to a lot of viewers because it was just not spoken about that much. All right, next we got Jay Inslee, who started out pretty rough and was overall quite terrifying. Just a really terrifying looking dude, I'm going to be honest. I'd say in the second half, he was actually pretty good at how much he hammered away at green policy, because it was actually not being talked about much. And he really hammered away that is his number one policy. And he got a lot more comfortable on the stage as it went along. I don't think he did that much to increase his support. Maybe he's somewhere like really solidly in the 1% range now, whereas before he was oftentimes like 0 or 1%. But I could see some people who are like majorly committed to climate change, possibly giving a hard look at Jay Inslee. It wasn't that bad of a debate for him because he took up kind of a niche. So overall, really not a bad performance from Jay Inslee. Moving on to John Delaney. This dude was mad annoying. Like this guy just needed to stop. Like he kept trying to butt in to like back and forth that he wasn't a part of and kept trying to take these centrist positions that weren't framed right. And it's not like he was like, oh, here are policy positions that I like that are centrist or why I think they're good ideas. It was more like, you're all wrong and you should feel bad. And he would just kind of jump in and be like, well, progressives, are stupid. Didn't really deliver much himself. That nobody knows who the hell he is. I mean, he's just a small representative, like a state representative, not even a federal representative, a state representative from Maryland. So yeah, not too great from him. Overall, I thought Castro won the debate, and then Warren probably a close second, and then Bill de Blasio behind that. Maybe Cory Booker or Jay Inslee behind that. I think everybody else was mediocre to bad. That's my final assessment on that debate stage. I'll do an assessment also after the second Democratic debate, which should have a lot of big players in it compared to this one.